I don't know if I quite finished everything, so let me just review. So, worms, one of the invertebrate phyla, actually several, 3 types of worms, but we'll lump them all together. Some free-living like the earthworm, okay? Others are parasites, including leeches, tapeworms, okay? Heartworms. So did I finish on about heartworms?
No.
So if you have a dog, you may give them these heart guard medicine tablets, or not tablets. It looks like meat, but anyway, yeah, the dogs like them. Those are medication that prevents the infection of this parasitic worm called it's called a heartworm. It's a worm that gets into the circulatory system of a dog. It lives off of blood. So it digests the blood as it's moving through the circulatory system. That's where the worm, the parasite, gets nutrients. But as it grows and as it reproduces, it can end up clogging up the heart of the dog so that it no longer can pump effectively, and eventually that can kill the dog. And so this picture I showed you at the very end is a dog's heart. This is a dog that died from this infection of this parasitic worm. And you see all that stuff that looks like rubber bands, that's all this parasitic worm. You know, hundreds of these worms that have reproduced and grown, basically clogged up all of the heart.
Can you like give it out surgery before he dies?
Not really. I mean, medicine will kill him, but if it gets to a certain point, you can't. Yeah. There are another type of parasitic worm, and parasites, again, they live in or on a host, and they live off of it, but they damage it, they harm it in some way. One other example is a disease called elephantiasis. Elephantiasis is caused by a worm. This is a person's foot. You see their toes down here. And this is a person's leg that has swollen up. And it's because of a parasitic worm. This worm gets into a person's body and it lives in their lymphatic system. We'll talk about the lymphatic system in a few weeks. But your lymphatic system is a series of vessels throughout your body, like blood vessels, but they don't carry blood. They carry body fluid. And so what happens is this worm gets into the lymphatic system, into these vessels. As it grows, gets larger, reproduces, it ends up clogging the lymphatic system. So body fluid throughout your body is always being redistributed. So what happens is when this worm clogs up the lymphatic system, fluid in your feet and your legs can't get back up into circulation because it's being blocked by this worm. And so those parts, those lower extremities especially, start to swell up. The body tissue around those areas becomes filled with this body fluid. Now it's not like a bubble of fluid that can be drained. It's just all of the tissue is just inundated with this lymph, this body fluid, and swells up. It can become infected, very painful, difficult to walk around. And this is a relatively, not a mild case, but I've seen pictures of much worse cases of elephantiasis, where limbs have swollen up 3, 4, 5 times the size of what they normally are, all the way up to the thigh even. And so it can get to the point where a person can't even walk anymore. Oh yeah, that's another.
I have a question.
Yes.
How does it start?
It starts by this worm getting into your body in some way. Now, generally, most of these parasites, tapeworms and this elephantiasis worm, they generally are mostly a problem in places with relatively poor sanitation. Places where waste from humans can get into the food supply and the water supply, places with open sewers. Those are places generally where lots of these parasitic organisms come from. And so it's not really a problem in the United States. We have good sanitation. And so waste that goes down through lots of these worms that are digestive parasites, they spread through when somebody goes to the bathroom. Some of these worms or some of the eggs come out as well. If somehow those eggs and those worms get reintroduced into other people, maybe because of poor sanitation, because there's open sewers where you have human waste flowing through, and people walk through, or it gets into streams, and people are in those streams or gather water from them. Well, then you have the possibility of these infections being spread more easily. What? There's several medications that can be treated for different types of worms that kill the parasite. Other times you may have to treat like skin infections that go along with once a person gets this disease. There's lots of different things.
So like if someone were to urinate in a lake and someone else were to jump in that lake?
Well, most of these are not carried in the excretory system, in the urinary system. Okay, most of them come out in fecal matter, in waste, as
So someone
solid
went to the
waste.
bathroom
Yes,
in
then
the lake.
that's
and
when
then
this is
someone
more
hopped
of
in
a
the lake
problem.
and swallowed water. No water.
All right, now, so these are the worms. We're going to move on a second, but I do want to show you this video because leeches are kind of interesting. Some point this week or next week we'll learn about leech therapy, but for now I just want to show you this video. It shows you what a leech actually looks like and a little bit about what they do. Yes?
I saw this weird thing where this guy puts leeches on his back to like his fingers.
Oh yeah, we're going to learn about that a little later. Something similar.
I'm Melissa Sanfietra.
Wait, where dice
There's zips.
You just invited me into this pond. We're no more than 3 feet in from the shore, and I am knee deep in muck.
Yes, you are.
I can barely pull my foot out.
This is what we call a wetland. What used to be called a swamp. Normally, it takes them a little while to realize we're here. They respond to movement in the water first, and they'll come swimming from many meters away. They can feel the movement, especially in an open spot like this. In fact, there's one coming right now. You see him? I got him. Okay. There we go. Oh, that's a doozy.
Is he big because he's fed, or big because he's just bigger and older?
This one's probably big because he's older, and it's probably its second summer here in this pond, and it's trying to find a place to feed on me.
And what's it looking for? It's already on you.
It's looking for a place that it can taste the right substances, salts or amino acids or whatever comes out of our skin. The palms of my hands are fairly rough, and the leech is not going to be able to get the right taste
So
there.
like tender parts.
Tender parts. Between your fingers is a fairly good spot.
Or between any 2 other parts of your body.
Between your toes, ankles are pretty good, the backs of knees, any place that's nice and soft. Uh-oh. You see him?
Got one.
Yeah.
He's got one.
So you want to hold on to one of these guys? You want to see what they're like?
No. I'm sorry.
Now people think leeches are slimy, but
Okay, I'll try one.
they're really only slimy when they start to secrete some mucus.
So that's gonna bite him.
Come on. He's not going to bite
Start
you.
to bite me.
We did
He's
not.
hanging on.
That was his back sucker. That is back sucker. Back sucker's the big one. The back sucker's the big one.
That's the one that sucks the blood?
No, it's the skinny end is the one that's actually going to do any blood feeding. That's the one that's moving around and actually.
Oh, so it's the one that's looking around.
Right. So this one is
So this one's just for attachment
just for
purposes.
attachment purposes and locomotion purposes. They can feed up to 6 to 8 times their unfed body weight in blood.
And then live off of that.
Live off of that for sometimes up to a year. We've had them in the lab for a year without feeding, and they're perfectly fine, and then they'll feed again if they're given the opportunity.
So this will suck on me and other humans. Any other animals?
Well, this one's actually fairly interested in frogs most of the time. We know that it will also feed on fishes, but it won't feed on turtles, for example, and for some reason we don't like catfish. But that's only one particular kind of leech. There are other leeches that will be out here in this pond that will feed on turtles specifically, or feed on frogs. They're in a family that has a really profound parental care. They actually hold on to their young as they develop, and then carry their offspring to their first blood meal when they go get their next blood meal. And that's better than some dinosaurs did.
So, family values.
Family values and leeches.
Can I hold him again?
Yeah.
Can the leech be lovable?
Looks like he likes it when I pet him. I pet him, he's kind of curled up and he's just standing with it. I think he likes me.
Okay, and where's
All right, so you see there in that video that those leeches, they live in the water, and basically they find their prey, they attach, they make a wound, they make a bite, and then they live off of that blood. They ingest that blood, and then that's what they live off of. Okay? We'll learn later on about how leeches sometimes are used in a medical treatment called leech therapy. All right, so let's move on to something a little more appetizing. Some things you probably have eaten before. Mollusks. Mollusks are have soft bodies. They're the phyla Mollusca. There's several different groups. Most of them have a shell. Sometimes it's inside, sometimes it's outside. Sometimes it's not there at all. And there's a bunch of different classes. One are the gastropods. Okay, these are things like snails. Okay, they have a shell. They have a soft body. They move with what's called a muscular foot. This sort of bottom part that they kind of slither around on. Snails and slugs, they have a tongue that is like very rough, and they scrape plant matter and eat leaves and stuff like that. That's what they consume. A snail without the shell is what? A slug, which I'm sure you're familiar with. If you go out in the spring and summer in the morning, you probably see slugs around.
I don't see those kind of slugs.
No, some slugs are some banana slugs get very, very large.
There's banana slugs in Jamaica. Mom took a picture of one.
Yeah, they get really, how big was that?
There's like that big.
Yeah, they get really, really big. So that's not one you want to step on when you're going out to get the newspaper in the morning or something. But
Would it kill you?
no, it's just kind of gross, yeah. Those are also mollusks, invertebrates. Then there are the bivalves. Bivalve meaning two shell. And yeah, oysters, mussels, clams. Those things are all bivalves. They have two shells. The shells open. Their muscular foot comes out. They can move around on the ground. They can burrow into the sand. They are filter feeders. So they have a siphon, a little muscular part that takes in water and then filters out food and spits back out. They also, some of them use like a jet propulsion where they sort of use that shooting water to move through the water. And that's the muscular foot there. When you open up a clam, if you're eating clams, you're basically, that's the body, that's all the digestive system and excretory system, all the parts of that mollusk, that's what's inside of there. And lots of examples of those bivalves, but also things like octopus and squid are also mollusks. They have like a shell inside, an internal shell, gives them support, but they're pretty advanced. We went from sponges to cnidarians to worms to mollusks. We're getting more and more advanced. We have advanced body systems. Okay, we have organs, sense organs, a brain. So octopus are pretty neat, and we're going to watch a video maybe today about some of the interesting things that they can do with their skin color and texture. Also squid. Whether it's a regular squid or a giant squid like this one. Giant squid are enormous, the largest invertebrates that have been discovered. And they are very mysterious, and scientists for a long, long time never saw them alive in their natural habitat. They would come and wash up on shore sometimes, and scientists would look at them and study them, but they live deep in the sea, and they're pretty neat.
If you eat like how calamari squid,
Yeah.
are you still eating the inside shell?
No, they take the shell out. If you ever go get calamari at a restaurant, you get the tentacly ones.
Yeah.
Or the rings.
I get the rings.
The rings are this, sliced up this way.
God.
The tentacly part of the bottom parts.
I'm not eating. I'm more.
So we're not
I will
eating the
stop
shell?
eating.
You know, you're not eating the shell. The shell's hard. It's
Why is it
inside.
so tough?
It takes. I mean, it's probably overcooked if it's tough.
My
Shouldn't be tough.
God.
Daniel.
I used to
Is there
like
such
shit.
thing as like a giant squid that is like really giant? Like,
No, not big people. They're very, very big though.
Can't they
Where's
just
the
wrap
watch?
around you and suffocate you? Because I saw a
Yes.
video of that one.
I don't know about that. Yeah, Matt.
Sure.
Yeah, shrimp. Well, we're gonna get to shrimp in a minute, but no, they're not. Not yet.
It's really good.
We'll get to shrimp. All right, echinoderm. No, we'll get to them in a minute too. They're with shrimp. So echinoderms are next group. The name means spiny skin, and echinoderms they have one body opening for food and waste. Food comes in, waste goes out. They have generally radial symmetry.
Like sea urchins.
Sea urchin's an example. Okay. Starfish come in lots of different shapes, sizes. They don't all look like this star. They come in different colors. A sand dollar.
Our sand color, is that alive?
Yeah, sand dollars are alive. I'll show you right now a video. And they do move. This is time lapse. They don't move very quickly, but they have these little feet. Echinoderms have something called tube feet on the bottom that they can sort of suction around and they move. And so you can see it moves in this spiral pattern.
Is that underwater?
That's on like the shore where it's wet, but you know. And basically they're filtering out tiny little bits of food from the sand and from the water in the sand.
you said that's a time lapse.
Yeah,
Over
it's
like
not really this quick.
over like what period of time?
Not that long. I mean, just a couple minutes. Just sped up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a sand dollar.
How come they call them a sand dollar?
I know it's shaped like a round, like maybe a silver dollar, I guess. I don't know where the name comes from exactly.
Does that thing also have like shell and blood and
Yeah, that's its shell, yeah, and it has organs
So if
inside
we
of
see
that
circle
shell.
things like that on the shore.
Where's the shell on this one?
That's its shell.
Like the purple thing?
Yeah,
Go over the
this is its shell.
ramp.
I don't know, that's part of its it's part of the spine
It
side.
looks like a flower.
Do sea urchins?
No, it's a cowboy hat.
Yeah, they move as well. Starfish move.
Why
Yeah.
were the cowboy
Oh, also starfish, you probably know, have an interesting ability to regenerate.
Yep.
You know, fishermen, at one point I've heard the stories that they would get annoyed at catching starfish in their nets because they're looking for fish. So they would chop them up into pieces and throw them back in the ocean to try and get rid of them. But
When they chopped them up, they grew more.
a starfish, the center part of a starfish is something called a central disc, and then the arms come out. Any piece of the starfish that contains a section of the central disc can grow into a whole new starfish. So they slice in 3 pieces and throw it away. Eventually, each of those 3 pieces grows into a new starfish. Exactly.
So
All right.
Is it reproduce? So
They can regenerate lost parts fairly easily.
So they're asexual?
They can. Yeah, Olivia? Oh, all right. Our last phylum is Arthropods. Now, you guys, I know you know the root. I talk a lot about roots of words and things. Pod. Pseudopods. What did the pod mean? What was the pod part? Feet. Pseudopod meant false feet. Arthropod means jointed feet.
Is it like arthritis? Like how it's arthritis?
Yeah, arthro comes from joint. Yeah. All right, so the arthropods have an exoskeleton, a hard shell that their body produces. It's protective, but you know, if you think about like a suit of armor is also like an exoskeleton, right? Now, if I have a suit of armor and the arms are just 2 straight pieces of tubes of metal and the legs, would I be able to battle any dragons very well?
Not very well.
Probably not. What do I need in my suit of armor?
You need
I need
joints!
joints. I need breaks between my sections that allow me to bend my elbow, and bend my knees and my
Move your
wrists.
finger.
Yeah, move all those parts. And so,
Nurse.
sure. And so, between each of these sections, there's a little gap that allows these arthropods to move their appendages and still be protected with their exoskeleton. They also have segmented bodies. Bodies are broken up sort of into sections, and you can see in this ant has several body sections.
Why is this house look like bone?
I don't know, it's just that's its abdomen. And
What is
they
that?
generally have,
Ant or a bee?
it's an ant. They have bilateral symmetry, so two-part symmetry where each half is basically very similar. And they have an exoskeleton.
What's an exoskeleton?
An exoskeleton is, so if you think about our skeleton, we have bones inside of our body. They don't have any bones inside of their body. What they have is a shell around the outside of their body. It's for protection and support and structure. It's just a different type of skeleton. And it's made of a protein material. And we'll talk about in a second the benefits of that. Israel? Yeah. Now, arthropods are about 75% of all animals. So we said, what percent are invertebrates?
25.
No? What percent of all animals are invertebrates in general? 95%. Then 75% of all animals are in this group, arthropods. It's a huge, huge group. There's different classes. There's different classes. This is
A crab.
a crab. A crab is a crustacean. That is one of the classes of the arthropod phylum. And you can see on this crab, it's orange exoskeleton. But you can also see these white areas are what?
Joints.
Those are the joints. Those are where they can bend their legs and appendages because there's a gap between the exoskeleton. Okay, and you can see
What do you
those.
mean like a gap? Like
See, there's like a space there, so you can have solid, right? Because there's no bend. There's a little space that allows for movement. That's not a hard
It's
shell.
not like the things are separated when you need a space.
No, he
It's not
needs a
like-
space.
But it's not a
between.
solid chunk of exoskeleton.
It's not like your
One
arm.
goes here, one goes here, and then in between they can bend.
Oh,
In between your arms, the bone right here and the bone right here, there's a teeny bit of space, so your arm can go like this.
Oh,
so
what
you have an
happened?
arm like this.
All right, so the crustaceans are one type. That's crabs, shrimp, lobster, crayfish. Those are all members of the crustacean class. Other classes of arthropods, there's millipedes is a class, centipedes is a class, arachnids. What are those?
spiders.
Spiders, scorpions,
Are you gonna show us
mites.
pictures?
And then the biggest
Wait,
group,
Mike.
mite.
Oh.
And then the biggest group are insects. That's a class, and there's, butterflies and ants and bees and dragonflies and beetles. All of those are in the insect class. When is circumcised. So, lots of different types of arthropods. Okay, and here's my example of those arthropods. So, arthropods often go through a process called metamorphosis. And I think you probably learned about this in elementary school. Anybody raise butterflies in elementary school? Oh, sorry. All right. So what is metamorphosis? How could you define it for me?
I did that back in 3rd grade where somehow I made spider web from a
Dana?
It's like, it's the stages of life.
Yeah.
It's like when, like how it's up there. Like say, I'm better with frogs. Like the egg, then like the larva, then the tadpole,
Yeah.
frog.
Yeah. It's a life cycle. It's a change in the structure of an organism as it goes through its lifetime. A change. And there's two types that we're going to talk about. There's incomplete metamorphosis, or there's complete metamorphosis. In incomplete metamorphosis, you have stages that basically look the same as the adult version. The immature versions are just smaller versions of the adult. So for example, in this grasshopper, the younger stages basically have the same body shape, the same parts, the same structure. They're just smaller. And we call those immature stages the nymph stage. We have an egg, hatches into the nymph, which may go through several cycles until it reaches the adult phase. Now with this exoskeleton, it doesn't grow. It's formed and it doesn't grow afterwards. So how can this grasshopper grow bigger if its shell is one single size and it doesn't change? CJ?
Sheds.
Yeah, and we have a word for that. The shedding of the exoskeleton is called molting.
Molting.
And so what happens every time this insect is going to grow larger, it sheds its exoskeleton, and then it's soft. It grows larger, and then a new exoskeleton forms that's larger. And you could see this, for example, around my house, in our backyard, we have like a wooden swing set. And in the springtime, we always find the leftover exoskeletons of beetles. My daughters always used to be afraid of them. I brought one in. It's actually up here.
Oh, I hate
And
those.
you probably have seen them before on trees or on stuff. And basically what happens when it's time for this beetle like this to molt, it goes to find some soft wood, it basically attaches to it, and then it breaks out of the back of its exoskeleton. If you, on our way out of the room, look at this, you can see there's a split down the back of the exoskeleton. So it splits open, the beetle comes out, goes away, it's soft. So at that time, it's vulnerable to predators. Easy for predators to find them and eat it very quickly because it doesn't have that hard exoskeleton. So it grows larger, and then a new exoskeleton will form. At some point in the future, it'll do the same thing. It'll molt again until it reaches its full adult size. And so you see those all over the place, those exoskeletons.
Oh, I had like at my old house. There's like I had like a wooden porch, like a wooden porch, and it's in my backyard. I used to go outside, and like on the railing of the stair step, there's like this weird beetle.
Yeah.
And I thought it was alive, so I
Yeah.
couldn't touch it. So I got a stick, and I whacked it, and then it like.
Yeah, it's just real light, and you just knock it right off. Yeah, you find them all over. Well, let's just finish this up real quick. Okay. CJ?
When I was little, I used to think that if I touched it, another one would grow out of it. And so when I touched it, I like always used to like jump back, hit my head on the climbing wall. It was bad.
Yeah.
Is that the beetle or is that the exoskeleton?
That's the exoskeleton
That is so
of the beetle.
mean.
All right. Now the other type of metamorphosis is
We're not friends.
complete metamorphosis. In complete metamorphosis,
I feel like it
there is
goes
a
both
change.
ways.
It's not just getting larger each step along the way. Complete metamorphosis, you have a change in the body structure. It looks like a different organism almost. And this is what you saw when you raised butterflies. What is the larva stage of a butterfly?
The baby stage.
A caterpillar.
Larva's
And the
die.
adult stage is the butterfly. The names, we have egg, which hatches into the larva. And then the larva hatches into, or transforms into the pupa, which then emerges from that in an adult. And in complete metamorphosis, what's generally, usually in organisms that go through this, what's the job of the larva? It has basically one task in life.
Eat and get fat.
To eat. Eat as much as possible, store up as much energy as possible to allow it to go through metamorphosis. When it does go through metamorphosis to the adult stage, it has one main task in life.
Oh wait, what are you talking about?
What is its job?
The pupa?
No, the adult.
Oh, is it?
It no longer really needs to eat very much.
Spread its wings and fly.
And fly and eventually reproduce.
Wow, that was weird. Knock on wood.
And so that's metamorphosis.
So is that what the whole book about the hungry caterpillar is?
What? This is not
The orange, the pear.
That's why it's very hungry, yeah. He's a larva. That's his job. All right, here's a little cartoon now that you understand metamorphosis.
Is that?
CJ.
my god.
What's the joke? What are his baby pictures when he was what?
When he was a
He was a baby little larva, then when he was a pupa, and his mom showing him.